deserves a day off. So, and thank you for coming to listen to me. That's very nice. And thank you for coming too. You could be out digging in your garden if you didn't want to be in the pollen. Well, we're going to have our healing meditation this morning. And by the way, I wanted to thank Diana for that lovely meditation she did. It was guided meditation of sorts, and each Sunday it's something different. And if you just get up 15 minutes earlier and come at 10, it's just really a wonderful 15 minutes. So, and then it's just 15 minutes till the service starts, and we have a really good time. So, what do we want?
Health.
Yes.
Peace.
Peace.
Safe travel.
Breathing easily.
Freedom.
More understanding of compassion.
You're going to get that today.
Good.
How about clarity? Doctor told me to take Claritin. I thought that was really profound, actually, that they have a medication named Claritin, and for allergies, that's what we need, is we need clearing. So, okay, well, let's take those, and what we do is just turn away from the busyness of the morning, and then turn inward and close your eyes if you choose. And as we breathe deeply of that universal spirit of life, the energy that is all around us, that is the birthing of newness in every moment. The chime brings us to our center. And as the music of the flute surrounds us, we realize that music is the language of God. It doesn't need words in order to express its harmony. And so we let the music wash us and cleanse us of doubts and fears, confusion. And as we are washed clear of those negative things that seem to get in our way from time to time, we let the light of the Spirit cleanse, heal, warm, and move us into a higher state of consciousness, where we are able to know our wholeness, to know that in truth, in God, there is no dis-ease. There is no lack of any sort. There's only the clarity and the ability to breathe easily and deeply of the spirit of life that is all around us, and moves easily through us. And how peaceful we are, because we are centered in this truth. knowing that no matter where we are or where we are going, we are always safe, held in the arms of infinite love, provided the avenues by which we are able to travel easily and smoothly. Knowing that as we move easily and smoothly, our freedom is assured. Freedom to think, freedom to be, freedom to do, the freedom to have the desires of the heart. And it is because of the oneness of our spirit, the very life of God, that is living by means of us, through each one of us. And so it is today that we open our hearts and our minds to understanding more about this thing called compassion. To be able to clarify in our own minds what is necessary in order for us to express the thing called compassion. And so I know that the intelligence within me and everyone else is at work in this moment to bring about all that God has intended and that we intend for ourselves, because we are open and receptive in a greater way than ever to allowing God to be God by means of us. And so it is in gratitude that I release these thoughts into that great law of mind and allow this to be so. And so we take the next few moments for ourselves to let the gratitude be so conscious in our own minds that it must be expressed. As we bring our awareness back into the room, feeling open and receptive and ready for the lesson, we let go and we let it be, and we say together, and so it is. Our theme for this month has been compassion. And it's, as I thought about it and started putting my lesson together, I wondered if I could bring anything new. There's already been 3 lessons before me. And as a speaker, it's always interesting how we have to contemplate what it is that we're going to speak about, and then not do the same thing that somebody else, or just regurgitate what's already been done. So I did that. I really thought about this lesson, and I worked it over and I worked it over again, and then I worked it over again, and then I worked it over again this morning. And I think I found some new things that will give us some meat to think about as far as this thing called compassion is concerned. So I'm going to start with a story. And it's sort of a fable, but I think it was true at one point. I don't even think it was true. I know it's true. So once upon a time, there was a failing monastery. No new postulates had entered for years, and the remaining monks were a crabby lot, always complaining about the other. The abbot was concerned that the monastery would close, and the place was in a state of disrepair. The grounds had fallen back to nature's disarray, and so the abbot prayed for God's guidance. One day, he got the idea to visit his old friend, the rabbi. Now, upon arriving at the synagogue, he poured out his feelings to the rabbi about the troubled monastery and the despondent monks. The two then sat in quiet contemplation, sipping tea, when suddenly the rabbi regarded his friend with a puzzled look. "Don't you realize that one of you is the Messiah?" The abbot's eyes grew round. "What? One of us? The Messiah? We are plain and simple men. How could that possibly be?" "Trust me, dear friend. God works in mysterious ways," replied the rabbi. And all the way back to the monastery, the abbot turned over this thought in his mind. One of them, the Messiah? You've got to be kidding me. Who on earth could it possibly be? Surely not Brother Paul, the slovenly cook. But why not? Doesn't God delight in nourishing his children? Absolutely not Brother Raymond, that silly joker, always acting the fool. But didn't Jesus say that we must become as little children in order to enter the kingdom of heaven? What about Brother Michael, the gardener? So silent and reticent. But maybe he isn't reticent after all, just caught up in an inner communion. Doesn't he commune with the flowers and animals like Saint Francis, the very patron saint of their order? After he arrived back at the monastery, the abbot called all the monks together and told them he had shocking news for them, and they needed to brace themselves to hear it. He then announced that one of them was the Messiah. Well, the news jolted everyone. They began to regard each other with a new respect, ever wondering if they were in the presence of the Holy One. And they even began to act differently. Every word and deed was interpreted as a gift from God. An abundance of love poured from the monks through their hearts and eyes and nourished everything that came before them. The gardens grew more beautiful and the food more delicious. People began to show up again for Sunday Mass, and soon young men began to apply for admission to the now thriving order. In short, the monks began to practice ordinary, everyday compassion. And guess what? Shift happened. Change came. And that story, of course, is inspiring, and it gives us a glimpse, just a glimpse of what the science of mind asks each person to do who studies the teaching, to understand and apply. The monks, in my opinion, were doing what Dr. Holmes writes about in the textbook on page 168. This is what it says. It is the practitioner's business, and of course we're all practitioners if we're practicing the principles of the science of mind. You don't have to be licensed. It is the practitioner's business to uncover God in every man, every person. God is not sick. God is not poor. God is not unhappy. God is never afraid. God is never confused. God is never out of place. The premise upon which all mental work is based is perfect God, perfect man, woman, perfect being. That's the end of the quote. So even though the premise is a bit different than the belief that the monks had in that they believed in only one Messiah, we, in the teaching of the science of mind, believe that we all have the potential of revealing the Messiah, the Christ presence that is within each one of us, if we choose to do so. If we choose to do so. That's the catch, isn't it?
Yes.
So, many people are unable to embody the idea or even accept or contemplate the truth that we are perfect beings. Perfect beings. But when we think about compassion as, let me back up. I want to do this. Many people are unable to embody the idea that we are perfect beings. Now, I know that there are some people who act like they're perfect, and we all say, oh, he thinks he's a gift from God, with resentment. And I'm not talking about that perfection of being, because that's ego. This is not the ego of the individual that I'm, and the personality of the individual. I'm talking about the perfection of God that is imbued within each one of us. It is what we are. It's our divine nature. We can't get out of it. You can desecrate it if you want to, but it can never take away the spark of the divine that is within us. It is that perfection about which I'm talking. Then, here's the deal. I looked up the word compassion, and it is defined in the dictionary as granted because of unusual, distressing circumstances affecting an individual or a circumstance. And so, in relationship to our perfection, it really is easy for most of us to express respect and love for people who are in the midst of or are having great suffering in their lives of some sort. Can I hear an amen?
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. We've all been there in all of our perfection to help anybody who is distressed and any sort of public kind of thing. People, I mean, we read and see about it all the time. Think of 911. We all remember what happened as the result of that tragedy. People who didn't know each other were instant best friends working together to save others' lives. People who had never given blood stood in long lines, hours and hours to do so. That little church across the street from Ground Zero organized its members and became a feeding station for hundreds of people, first responders, police, firemen, doctors, whoever. They cooked 3 meals a day and fed hundreds of people who worked tirelessly to help save lives and to find the bodies of those who did not survive. The list goes on, and I don't want to because it's depressing, actually. But people who help in any sort of traumatic experience are practicing compassion in that unusual, distressing circumstance. And I love then what the Dalai Lama says about compassion. Because he says it's not a religious business. It is human business. It is not luxury. It is essential for our own peace and mental stability. It is essential for human survival. That's from the Dalai Lama. It's not religious business. So if it is essential for human survival, I started wondering why it's difficult to practice every day. compassion, ordinary compassion, every day. Because we don't. Could it be that when we are relating on a day-to-day basis with our family members, our co-workers, our neighbors, and even strangers, we practice forgettery rather than memory? We forget that we're divine beings, that we are the perfection of God, perfect man, perfect being. And so is everyone else, no matter what they are being, doing, or having in their own lives. But if we forget, then you do what I do probably. I find if my close family members, friends, and especially people I don't know well aren't in major trauma, it's a bit harder to wonder if I am the presence of a Holy One. I'm not able to see God every day when people are doing things that I don't think they should be doing. Anybody out there? Nor am I able to interpret every word and action of some people to be a gift from God, like the monks. I'm not able at all times to pour an abundance of love through my heart and eyes when one of my kids or my grandchildren makes a major mistake about which I have told them not to do millions of times, and so have their parents. Do I nourish everything I look upon every moment of every day? No. Do you? I mean, we try, don't we? We try to remember when, or I'll speak for myself. You're probably better at it than I am. I do stop myself when I forget who I am. I stop myself. I've told you this before. I just say, stop. And then I have to remember, now wait a minute, what's going on here? So when I do that, and see God in every person, every day, in every situation, I am able to be the practitioner for which I am licensed to be, and know that every individual, no matter what their appearance, is not sick, they're not bad, they're not wrong, they're not ignorant, or any other name we probably have called one or two. My favorite word driving is idiot. And I'm trying to stop myself when I find myself, Again, perfection of the personality, no. Perfection of spirit, yes. When I choose to be. We all have a choice. From moment to moment, in ordinary, everyday circumstances, we can do and be the monks. We can have shift in our lives. Our difficult relationships would heal. Our gardens would flourish. Happiness for everyone would expand. And our bodies would be healthier because our minds would be focused on the good. You know, that's what God is, really. God is not some anthropomorphic being up there. God is infinite goodness. God is the richness of the Spirit that reveals itself as love, as peace, as harmony, the desire to help, as compassionate care, or whatever else we choose to call it. But it's to focus on the good, and we are challenged with that. So, the challenge then is not to wait until some distressing experience happens to practice compassion, but to choose to do what Dr. Holmes says, which is to uncover God in every person. Uncover God in every person. Let's say that. Uncover God in every person. Could that be an intention for this week? Could we promise ourselves that when we're looking at something, judging people when they fall short, goof off, or simply have a different lifestyle than ours, could we practice ordinary compassion? See the God in that center? Now, a good way to train ourselves to do that is to use the technique from the Course in Miracles. I've used this for years. I'm sure some of you have heard it, and you probably still use it. It's a 3-step exercise of mind. So if something disturbs you and you can't see God in the person or the situation, this is what you need to say to yourself, or even out loud. I sometimes say it out loud. Number 1, there's nothing wrong here. Number 2, no one is to blame. Number 3, how can I look at it differently? Now, do you see the steps? It simply takes you through this little exercise in your mind. There's nothing wrong here. So it takes away the blame, the shame, the pointing of the finger, or the falling short, or whatever you've done to say about the situation to yourself. Just takes out, there's nothing wrong here. No one is to blame. No one is to blame. Because God doesn't blame anything. God just knows truth. It's us who knows when we're pointing the finger and saying, this is bad, this is wrong, that's not right. Shame on them, or even shame on me. So how can I look at it differently? And that's exactly what the monks did. The cook wasn't a slovenly cook. The gardener was doing his meditation. The goof off was being a childlike person. And so that's the shift that needs to happen in our own minds as we begin to do that. You know, the labels we place on people from their actions, taken by mostly unconscious thinking on their part, creates feelings of separation in ourselves, and then we separate ourselves from the very individuals that we're probably trying to love. So it's the labels. We've got to take the labels off, because what we really want is unity, oneness. And so if we have compassion every day for ordinary mistakes people make from time to time, we can be the soft place for another to fall. Have you ever thought of yourself as a soft place for other people to fall? Isn't that a nice idea? So that's compassion for others. Now, if we are going to be able to have ordinary, everyday compassion in our lives, we have to build relationships. A relationship, with ourselves. Because if we don't have compassion for ourselves, we're not going to be able to have it for other people. If we have placed labels on other people, we've placed them on ourselves and projected them out there. So, if we cannot come into an understanding that we are a divine being, a holy one, that we are God in action as an individual if we choose to be, then the understanding, Sam, about compassion goes right out the window, because we won't be able to do it. The German Catholic mystic Meister Eckhart wrote that God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by the process of subtraction. I'm going to say that again. God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by the process of subtraction. And what we need to subtract is the guilt, the shame, the blame, the self-denial, lack worth, low self-esteem, so that we can begin to embrace the love of the Spirit that is alive in all of us. It's that simple. Love and appreciate ourselves first. Have compassion for who we are as a divine being and even a human being. We make mistakes. And if we hold that against ourselves, the love of the Spirit can't get through that block. It's like standing on the hose and not letting the water flow. I have a wonderful minister friend with whom I spoke a while back. He was home because doctors had diagnosed a detached retina, and he had to be absolutely quiet and do nothing until the final tests results were in. So I called him later in that week, and he had heard from the doctor. It was only partially detached, and there would be recovery from with some laser work and medication. As we began to communicate more, he started to lament what a bad minister and practitioner he was. And he said, I just don't know what it was that I couldn't see. He questioned what it was that he had missed in his diagnosis of himself, as we metaphysicians tend to do from time to time. You know, we blame ourselves. Oh my, we weren't good enough. We didn't practice our spiritual essence enough. So he went on and on about how imperfect he had been. And I finally said, stop. I would like you to consider this from a different standpoint. Go through the Course in Miracles. There is nothing wrong here. You are not to blame. You have recently moved across the country to join in the work of another church, which means you detached from the work that you had done in California. Could you see this differently? That you are reattaching to your new surroundings? And that you are seeing with new eyes what needs to be done there? This has made you slow down. Get the message? Slow down. Do it differently so you can reattach to the new. Well, he began to cry, which was surprising. But he thanked me for being the messenger of hope. Those were his exact words. You're a messenger of hope. And being able to look for the good instead of what was wrong. And looking back on that experience, I think at that moment, I was the Messiah. I was the anointed one. I was a servant of God, if you will. And I'm not saying that from conceit. I'm saying that because it came from my heart, from my mind. Those ideas, they weren't my ideas. These ideas were coming to me to tell him. And it was simply the truth as I saw it. I was the soft place for him to fall. He was able to let go of the self-condemnation. That's ordinary, everyday compassion. But we have to do it for ourselves so we can do it for others as well. So I'm going to close with one of Dr. Holmes' writings that is my favorite. It's on page 33 of the textbook, and I think it's one of the most beautiful concepts that we can keep in our memory bank. And this is what it says. God is always God. No matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be, there is always a something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice, forever whispering within our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings. We all have that thing within us, that thing that sings and sings. So go, be the Messiah in your own life, and then be the soft place where others may fall. God bless you in your journey. So